Hey, this is Todd. I am here with Daniel from the Bandits Keep channel. We're going to be talking about treasure maps. Daniel, why don't you give me your official introduction, and then we'll get started.
This is the official introduction.
Official.
I'm Daniel from Bandits Keep. We're going to talk about treasure maps. So yeah, I've been watching Todd on Hex Press for a long time, and he said, "Hey, come on over and let's talk." So we're going to talk treasure maps because it's kind of one of those areas I think people don't talk about a lot. So we'll see what we can come up with.
Absolutely.
I think that's a good topic. I
think it's excellent.
I even made notes, which I don't usually do, but hey.
Awesome. Well, let's go. You got the notes. What do you got? So I guess should we start at the? I don't know where it's like such a big topic. So I guess, well, just give me your notes because I got some stuff, but I'll
spit out what I have. So what happened was I was going through the treasure stuff because I was thinking, I have this thought that the scrolls should be more popular, as treasure types, and then I realized that in BX, anyways, treasure maps are like, I don't know, a third of the scrolls. So I was like, well, wow, that's actually really, really good. And I started thinking more about like the nature of like original D&D and BX and like the earlier games, and they were kind of more ingrained in pulp fantasy, and in pulp fantasy, treasure maps are a huge thing. In fact, I just finished reading King Coleman's Mines, which is basically they're following a treasure map, and I thought, well, this is actually really interesting because we don't see that as much, in modern gaming. People generally have like a quest giver, right? Like there's a guy that says, "Go do this for me." So if you're playing in a game that's more open-ended, like let's say hex crawls, right, or that kind of stuff, treasure maps will inspire players to do or to go on quests without having to have the GM kind of give it to them through a quest giver, I guess, was my thought.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I totally agree. I think the other thing is even just a map. It doesn't even have to be a treasure map. So at one point in a game that I was running, a play-by-post game, the first quest the party got, which was kind of like, I like to give a sort of a quest or have something obvious to do when they first get into the world, just to kind of ground people. Instead of like, hey, you're in a town, do whatever you want, and they're kind of frozen. It's like, okay, you just got here, do this thing. You'll get to kind of get the lay of the land, and you can kind of get your feet wet. Well, so the carrot I gave him the first quest was, all right, you are going to guard the surveyor who's going to go off into the mainland. He's going to go find this high point so you can do some mapping. And if you do that, we'll give you this map thing that we have. The concept here was kind of like there was a rediscovered continent, this kind of new area. And so when they came back, they got this fragmentary map. And the map had several points that were picked out with kind of rough names, but no real explanation of what they were or anything. It was just kind of a name. But having something on a map with a name on it and kind of an idea of like, one was kind of like a city kind of thing, one was sort of a mine and these other things. And that automatically the players started thinking about, well, where do we want to go? And having these spots to try to get to. And they were trying to figure out, oh, do you think there'll be better kind of loot or things at the mine? Or should we try the city? And maybe the city seems too, whatever. It kind of just giving them that kind of fragmentary piece of map that they could fill in later when they would discover things that weren't on the map. Because the map, I made sure to tell them, like, this map is not supposed to be like your Roll20 map to scale with everything. Like, this is a hand-drawn fragment piece, but it does have these kind of landmarks put on there. Just gave them automatically focus on, as soon as they had that, they were like, okay, now we can decide where to go next, and we can go. And obviously a treasure map has those same kind of details with even more of the promise of obviously treasure or something, valuable on the other side of it.
Yeah, and I think it opens up like a more means of play, right? So if they've got this map like you're describing, they might see the name of a town. Maybe they'll start asking people about it. So it opens up them meeting new NPCs, hiring sages. Maybe that rumor that they heard 2 towns over, now they see on the map and they see a name and they're like, oh, hold on, didn't we hear a rumor about this name or similar? And I think that can tie in the campaign and make it feel more alive as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the idea of, like you were saying, they come up a lot in the treasure when you're rolling for treasure, and you can even put them together, have multiple fragments of a map. So maybe, I think they do this a lot in movies and books, right? You get the piece of the map that's just the middle, and you're trying to find out, well, maybe there's a related place and we can find another piece of the map, and then that's gives us one other piece that maybe tells us part of the way. And then we got to find another piece of the map that takes us all the way. I think I remember the old video game, Sid Meier's Pirates. I don't know if you ever played that, but you're playing pirates on the Spanish Main. Is a really big open, really sandbox game of playing an up and coming pirate or privateer, and there was elements where you were trying to get these pieces of a map, and you had to get all the pieces to actually figure out where sometimes you could kind of look in where it was and maybe get lucky and guess which little island it was on, but you had to get these multiple pieces, and you would lay the maps in, and suddenly you would say, you go from Hispaniola and you dig around here, and okay, there's the treasure finally. But being able to have these different bits is a real way to kind of give people a reward, but a reward that leads to more adventuring, as opposed to just here's the thing. It's like, no, you're gonna put in some more work for the thing.
Right, they get to the lair at the end, right, and they kill the monsters or whatever, and instead of the kobolds having for some reason a pile of gold, which would be weird, they have a body they were eating, maybe, and on that body is a map, right? So that still gives you that treasure that they got for defeating the kobolds or whatever they're fighting, but it's not. It kind of makes sense, and it also then leads to the next step of the adventure, which I think is really interesting. But I like the idea of it being in pieces. What you said, it's actually really interesting, and you could have somebody do the classic. They tear the map in half, and it's kind of like, we'll give you one half now, and when you come back with my thing that you need to get, we'll give you the other half.
Right. I'll hold on to this piece, and you'll right. Yeah, I feel like that's a classic trope of the kind of map that's each person's holding on to, and they have to have them all. And there was that I think it was part of a Tintin book, but it was in if you ever saw the Tintin animated movie, that was part of it too. These different elements that had to be put together that were given to like the descendants of this. Well, I guess he was part of the British Navy, but it was supposed to lead to this treasure, and you had to have the pieces from the different kids and overlay them and hold them up to, I think, a light or something. And then once you put them all together, it would show you the coordinates where you needed to go. If you only had one fragment, it wasn't going to get you there. And so Tintin and the other guys were all fighting to try to get the different elements of the map. And of course, it doesn't have to be a paper map. It can be, we've seen different movies and things. It could be like a kind of an amulet, a piece, or any kind of thing that could be a cipher can be, your map. I think the only trick is, which I think is always, the issue when you're playing these games is when you're rolling for things randomly, you end up with this map and you have to kind of think about in the spur of the moment, kind of what it is and kind of what it's going to be, which can be, I think, daunting for some folks, where it's just like you have a treasure map and it's not obvious. It doesn't say it's a treasure map 2 somewhere. It just says, treasure map fragment. And then it's up to you in that moment to kind of be on the spot when someone's going to ask you like, where does it go? Or, what is it? And then you got to go, I think it's a lot easier for folks to want to just go like, I'll just give them more coins and I'm not going to mess with the map. But, you do lose something in that way to keep spurring people on. And it could give you things for your bad guys to go after. If you're wondering, like, well, why might the the orcs be after the parties? Well, maybe the party's got these fragments to an orc hoard of treasure that's been lost, and they know the party has these fragments, and they have some fragments themselves, and they want it.
Well, that's really interesting, especially if it is, like you said, like an amulet or something. Maybe the players don't even know that they have the map, and they're being chased for something they don't even know they have.
Yeah. I just had the picture in my mind actually came from the Goonies, where they had that medallion, and you could see the 3 rocks in the medallion, but you kind of had to see the 3 rocks, and then you're like, oh, that's it. Other than that, it just looked like just some weird shapes stamped in the metal.
Right, and isn't that kind of like in The Hobbit, right? They had the map, and then there's like a little poem at the end, right? That I don't know, they had to expose it to fire or something. And they read it, and then that told them where to look for the bird. Or
exactly. I mean, it's always funny. Like a lot of those movies. It's just one of those tropes. I think you start thinking about all of a sudden, all these ideas or things are riffing off you from just pirate movies to just any kind of film, usually, or, these kind of adventure films has some kind of map like construct or MacGuffin that folks have, whether it's like National Treasure, where they're looking for some map fragment that's hidden inside like the Constitution or something, or the Declaration of Independence or whatever. Like there's always ways to get these kind of map things in there. So what is your experience? Have you used a lot of them when you've rolled them up on your tables? How have you usually handled them?
Oh, yeah, right. So I have a note that says, make some in advance, right? But the only time that I've had it come up randomly, just because I was just rolling for treasure, I was lucky enough to have a book. I think it's out of print now. It was Janelle Jacquet wrote it in the 70s, I guess, for Judges Guild. It's called The Book of Treasure Maps. And each one is rough kind of map, like hand-drawn looking map, and then it has like notes on it, like you hand to the player, and then the other side is like an actual D&D map with like the stats and stuff for the DM. So it's pretty cool if you can get your hands on it. But yeah, the only problem is that it's in world for the Judges Guild world, so there's a lot of like, it was like, what is it? The players were like, where is this town? I'm like, well, in ancient times, that town was called. So I had to kind of fudge it a little bit, but I just kind of told the player, I'm like, listen, I'm gonna have to change some stuff to just stand by, and I just did it not on the fly. I mean, my style of DJing, I don't mind stopping. I know people sometimes don't want that to be the case, but I'll just tell the player, I don't know.
I've done it too. I've been like, hey, like, like this, like, oh, it's the treasure map. I'll say, yeah, you guys are looking at it. You're looking at it. By next week, you'll have an idea what it is. So, just assume you're looking at it while you're doing other things, and come back to me in a week, and I'll have like what the map actually is. Because usually they're not. I mean, usually I just say, listen, it's not actionable right now anyway. You're at the bottom of the dungeon. You're gonna, you got a lot to go on before you're gonna get out. So just hold on to it, assuming you don't lose it by next game night. We'll have figured out like what it is. But I feel like that's kind of the only thing I think that maybe holds kind of maps like that stuff back is the fact that it does require some extra attention from the GM. And if it's not a strength of yours, or like you saying, you're someone that doesn't feel like you could stop and wait and you expect to have an answer right away, it is that kind of delayed, groundless gratification for everybody. It's not, I think as players, I imagine if you overdid the maps, it could become like, why is all my treasure in another castle? Essentially, we get down to the bottom of the dungeon. Your treasure's in the next dungeon. It's like, So it's something to be used, I guess, with care, and hopefully you can, like we were talking about, kind of build in it to give it meaning, right? So you're not just here's the treasure map. It's got to lead to something. It's got to lead to something good. Like you did your video on magic items. That was really cool. And it's like, those are the kind of things that you want to have kind of, and be at the end of these treasure maps. It's just a treasure map to like 100 gold pieces. Like the first time they get one through there and they're all excited that they get out of there, and it's like, there was just like a bag of coins. It's like the next time a treasure map's going to come up, they're probably just going to want to foist it on somebody else back in town or something. They're not going to want to pursue it. So whatever that balance is. In and of itself, that could be interesting, right? Absolutely. Especially if it's like, again, like in that Tintin movie, there's a funny moment at the beginning where Tintin buys the model ship that's going to end up having the map fragment hidden inside. And right after Tintin buys it, the bad guy comes up to try to buy it. And the poor guy at the flea market sitting there, and the guy's trying to get Tintin to buy it. And finally the bad guy goes, name your price. And Tintin's like, no, it's not for sale. And then the flea market guy's like, all my life, I've been waiting for name your price, and I missed it by 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Like that can all lead to. And the other thing I was thinking that beyond the scope of just, well, first of all, just a couple of you've opened my mind as you were talking. What I would probably do is, when you make a hex crawl or something, like you've got your area, right? So you might have like 4 or 5 dungeons, kind of just names of them in places. Those can be your treasures, right? So if you randomly roll a treasure map and you want to say where it is right away, you could just look on your list of kind of things you have on the hex crawl anyways they don't know about yet, right? Like, there's a temple 17 hexes away buried in the jungle or whatever. You could just make it to that, right? So that does give you a little bit of something to go on if you've done that. If not, the other thing I wrote down here, which I think is interesting, I don't think again, a lot of people think to do, and I feel like people probably may have done in a more of a mega dungeon situation, is to have the treasure map lead to treasure that's in that dungeon.
Oh, that's a great idea.
You think about the idea of like a party of 5 or 6 adventurers go down to level 6 of the dungeon and they kill some monsters, but there's only one guy left and there's a huge treasure chest he can't carry. So he's like, crap, what am I gonna do? So he like hides it somewhere. He goes to where some rubble is. He kind of buries this chest and he makes a note for himself. And then he leaves, and one way or the other, maybe he dies, the party finds the map, where they join up with him and he's got this map, and they go back down and follow this map to find where he moved that treasure, right? It's still a map, and it still leads to treasure. It doesn't have to be this long voyage.
I think it's an awesome idea, and I really think that that's something that I would throw at beginning parties, because something that can, one of the things that playing the old school, I'm sure you did this when you were playing back as a kid, that's really become a lost art, is that mapping of the dungeon. And now the way maps are, they're not, it used to be, because you kind of had a sense that the maps were always, especially when you're playing with kids, we all had graph paper. and you would map out your dungeon to fit like in the square. So you could look for those secret passages or things where you could see a weird gap, and it's like, wait a minute, there's like a little L-shaped space here, and there's nothing there. Well, there might be a secret door there, because all the dungeons just fill your grid up as much as you could. If you have these elements and you add one of these inside dungeon maps, you can really express to your players things to look for secret doors. So maybe they don't know that in this dungeon, say that there's the motif you're going with secret doors is like statues. That statues where there's a statue of a certain kind is kind of going to be a secret door, secret something nearby. But if you have one of these map fragments that kind of leads them to a statue and points that out to them, not only will they be able to go and feel that great surge of aha when they do it, next time they see a similar statue later on in the dungeon, they're probably going to think back and remember that, and you can help kind of build up that idea of looking for these common features. And it can be kind of a teachable thing, but in a way where you're not giving them flat out instruction, but you're doing it all in the game in a way that makes perfect sense. But like you said, maybe somebody found something there and they couldn't carry it, or they just repurposed a secret passage that they found, or for whatever reason threw some stuff in there and then decided to make a note like come back and pull down the trident on this merman statue, and then it'll open. Once they find that, and you have more statues of mermen, if you're hopefully being consistent and tying these things together thematically, then they're gonna, almost guarantee you the next time they see a merman statue with a trident, someone's gonna go and pull it down. And hopefully you reward them with, showing that yes, you have picked up on a clue about this place. And that treasure map becomes a great way to illustrate it without, telling them or relying on a die roll, one of those X and 6 die rolls to say, oh yeah, you noticed the hinge in the arm of the statue.
Yeah, no, that's actually really great. That idea. I was just thinking as you were saying that, like a lot of my players will carry chalk and mark their path through the dungeon. So you could even have somebody that did that. They're leaving the dungeon, they want to get back to where they put the treasure. They just mark it somehow. And again, you find this trail basically. So it's not so much a map as a trail, and maybe that leads somewhere. And they can be, of course, they'll be paranoid as players are, but it may or may not lead somewhere.
Or they find where the chalk splits in two, and somebody else had cleverly been like, I know the real chalk way, so I'm gonna make this other chalk path that leads to the 10-foot pit filled with spikes. Right. Yeah, I always like when my players come up with stuff. But my players have started doing that too. It's always been fun playing with these guys because they're 3 guys, a bit younger than me, but kind of new parents, new wanting to get into gaming. And it's fun to see them kind of picking up on these things. Like the first couple times they went to a dungeon and they wanted to do stuff like, I was like, there are markings and kind of hieroglyphics type things on the wall. Oh, can we write it down? I'm like, yeah, you can. What do you got to write it down with? Like, nothing. I'm like, well, I guess you can't. But next time they were in town, they're like, I'm buying all the parchment we can carry, and I'm buying this stuff. And then like chalk was the same one. Like, you can mark a trail going back. I'm like, yeah, great. How do you do that? Oh yeah, okay. And they're like, next time we're in town, we're getting chalk. I'm like, yep. One of the guys has really loved his 10-foot pole. He was trying to use this 10-foot pole for everything, like a weapon. It was like everything. Can I tie this to it and make it into like a long, long club? I'm like, yeah. And then when it finally broke, because he was trying to do all this crazy stuff, I'm like, yeah, it broke. So now you have 2 5-foot poles. And he was,
oh no. What can you do with 2 5-foot poles? A lot.
Oh yeah, they were figuring out like, can we make a 7-foot pole if we tie these 2 together? They were all about it. So yeah, I think all these things that can help activate, particularly new players or players who may be, not. And I feel like one of the things, and it's been a while since I played 5th edition, but I feel like the emphasis in 5e, and I don't know if all the digital tools has made some of these, is all the maps end up being built into the system. So if you're running Roll20, you're running Fantasy Grounds, and you get all these fancy maps and things, but I think it takes away from that element of the players really, one, just managing their own maps, but 2, them having that as something for them to think about and kind of philosophize about, as opposed to let me scroll on the screen and see where the fog of war has, shifted or whatever, to really trying to think about those things. And I've enjoyed my game's it's still, we're still playing remotely, and, it's just theater of the mind. So, I really put the onus on them to really try to figure out these spaces and everything else, and whether we're wilderness traveling or in the dungeon. And I think like those, when I can give them those kind of props, like a treasure map of some sort or something, like I feel like it kind of helps them in a way that is, I think of it as more immersive than if I had a fancy digital map on Roll20, and we were just moving chits around or doing something like that, where I can say like, here, look at this, ponder it. It's not perfect. It's not going to have 5-foot squares marked out for you. You're going to have to figure this stuff out, and you're going to have to decide and do that. And I think for them, I guess maybe it's a different kind of immersion, but I feel like it really is an immersive aid.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes you, it's not better or worse, I'll say, as always, right? But it's a different way of playing, for sure.
Yes.
You definitely, I think, too, it makes players think of things which I usually try to roll with, that I didn't think of. Like, they might just be like, well, is, this like this? Yeah, it is. Sure, why not? Whereas looking at a map, they might not think that,
Yeah, I've always felt that way with descriptions too, right? If you describe a room, they might try to fill in their mind, right? What you didn't describe. But if you give them a picture of a room, they're going to tend to look at just what's on the picture.
Right. So it kind of comes down to just what you get used to, I guess. I think it takes the time of the players to try things, like you're saying, and they kind of learn new skill, and we'll say, for lack of a better way of saying it, that they'll immediately think, oh, hold on, this room, does it have any furniture in it? Okay, I'm going to use this chair to hide behind or whatever. Whereas if it was no thing drawn there, they might not do that. But yeah, I think that so I made a list. So I have a couple things.
All right, go for it.
So we were as we were discussing earlier, the idea of like, if you just randomly came on a treasure map, I don't have a list for this. This is something we can ask for comments. So you should write comments, because we're going to build a list. This is my plan. Ready?
Yes, please.
So I had this great, and I copied it from somebody who I can't remember. It was on a blog, but it was basically an encounter table, and it was 2 tables. I think there were 10 each, and one list was like the types of people. It was a human-centric game, so it was like mercenaries, merchants, slaves, runaways, whatever. And then it would have a verb. So like fighting, stealing from, hiding, running. And then so you'd roll on the first list, then the second list, and then the first list again. So you'd get like mercenaries trading with merchants, right? So you get a list like that.
Okay, that's cool.
So I'd use that for my random encounters. We could do this for the treasure map. So the type of item, and then how it's activated, right? So you could be like paper map activated by light, or you could have like paper activated by water. Right, so we could have 2 or possibly 3 tables that we roll on, and then it creates us a random.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. So there we go. That's the work for the people that are watching. We're not going to. You do that.
It just made me think of the Hobbit, because they have like the Lonely Mountain map is essentially that way, right? It has got part of the map is just there, which is get to the Lonely Mountain, but it's that what was like the new moon, the first new moon or something. I don't know, whichever moonlight would reveal the other part of the map, which is the back door. Which, because otherwise the map isn't all that helpful. I don't think they needed everyone knew where the Lonely Mountain is, and the front door is not exactly, hidden. It's like, this is I can imagine if someone sees that map without the secret stuff, like, what a worthless map. Like, exactly. I can see that mountain for 100 miles. I don't need a map to get there. Right. But that other part is like, okay, now this makes sense.
Right. So the first new moonlight, so we have like an activation thing that activates it, and what the map's made out of, and an amulet that you look through, right, or that kind of thing.
Totally. And so, I like the idea of, I was just thinking of different kind of magic that could activate these things, and not even just the conventional stuff. Like, what if you had, like, this was a map that was almost a scrimshaw on like an undead bone, and you had to be in a desecrated area for this, like, this evil, whatever, the kind of, if you think kind of run one ring, like, it has to be like burning for the text to come out, that like you have to be in a desecrated zone, and then this like undead bone will kind of shift or change to reveal, the text or whatever, the picture or whatever, or both, that was,
that's
somehow
really cool.
inscribed on it in some kind of necromantic ritual. I don't know what it would lead to, and I don't think I'd want to go, but
well, hopefully a lot of treasure. Right. Well, I guess that's too where you've got 2 kinds of maps, right? Well, there's lots of different, but you've got the kind where the treasure is noted, like lots of gold, right? Is here, right, on the map, or you have something that's just a map, and you're like, where does this go to? What's the reason for it? And that's a little more vague. So that depends on your part, I guess, your group of players.
You could also have and there's also we could also have like a rumor table too, kind of like what's on the map. Like something like I watched the Money Pit, the show Curse of Oak Island. about these guys. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's there's this thing. It's a famous place called, well, it's famous in certain circles, called Oak Island. It's off of Nova Scotia. And a long time ago, actually in the early 19th century, I think it was some kids, they found this kind of I don't know if it was a hole at the time or something, and it turned into this whole thing, which from that time, so we're talking like 1805 or something, to present day, people have been monkeying around in this area trying to get down to the bottom of it, figure out what's there. There's supposedly booby traps. The place, it constantly fills with water. It's been so destroyed, the area, as people trying to work on it, that the actual original location of that hole that those kids found has been lost. People don't even know exactly where it is, but somewhere down in there, and the rumors of what's supposed to be inside it are like treasure, the Ark of the Covenant, Templar stuff, Shakespeare's original manuscripts. Like everybody on the show, they're always, I mean, the guys are it's two brothers who kind of run it, and they're pretty grounded, but it's a TV show and everything, so they entertain, anybody. So someone will come over and say, oh, it's this, it's that, it's the original King Solomon's treasure is here. Like, anything is at the bottom of this thing, but everyone's got like a different story. I think the only thing that people seem to agree on is, well, it seems like there's something down there, and I don't know how much money they've spent trying to get down to get it, but what that thing is, depending on who you ask, it could be a million, different things.
Like my car keys or something.
Yeah. George Washington's wooden teeth are down there.
Exactly. It's like, what? No, that's great. But yeah, so that leads to the idea of having to possibly have rumors or sages research things, which I think is interesting. And that's a good money sink for people, because
yes, if you're ever wondering what you want people to spend their money on, like sages and all those things are excellent. I love trying to get players to kind of grease the wheels of information and stuff. It's funny because my current players, because they're new to the game, they're so earnest. Like when they asked me to run, I asked them, like, what kind of game you want to run? They were like, oh, I want like intrigue, like Dune and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, so there's going to be a lot of intrigue. These guys are it's so funny because everyone else is very like, what are you doing for me lately? And like, don't trust her. And they're just like handing out stuff. I'm like, all right, well, they're just walking into all this stuff. But like, yeah, having all these guys need to be greased, need to spend money to make money kind of thing is definitely a way to help, like, yeah. And don't make it cheap. Like if you need to have them decipher a treasure map, don't just say like 2 gold, like make it something. I mean, that could be something where they need to go adventure to get the money to get the next part of the map done. Like you can really like get a lot of different things moving. It's like, okay, it's going to cost you 5,000 gold for this sage to go, and he's got to travel and he's got to do whatever. And he needs to buy the stuff to cast the spells to try to figure this out. So it's going to cost you, $5,000. Oh, you don't have it? Well, now you got to go and get it. And you have this carrot of, well, if we get $5,000 in gold, not only will we probably level up, we're low level, but we can then spend it on this sage to then get the other part of this, obviously with the understanding that the more hoops you make them go through to get to the bottom of this map, it better be something good at the bottom of the map, right? If like they're spending 100,000 gold at the bottom line to get to this thing, it can't be like, and here's 200 gold pieces. Here's a small picture of someone's grandmother. It's like you gotta have some good stuff.
Yeah, I think most of the maps do list themselves as being thousands of gold. So that's usually good, right? I mean, yeah, you're not going to have. I mean, maybe one of the in-dungeon ones, it might be a small amount because I'm going to find it right away. But I think, for sure, it should be a worthwhile, like the kind of thing you have to bring henchmen to help you carry it out, kind of treasure. Yeah. I think if you're going,
it's definitely a way to, if you want to introduce like rarer, more powerful magic items. Right. Mm-hmm. Like this is what because if you think about it, if you obviously depending on your setting, but you have a above average magical weapon, and regardless of where you are in your magicness, but it's whatever it is, it's above whatever the average magicalness is. Right.
Right.
You think about, well, why would these things get lost all the time? If they're so amazing, they do it. And if they got kind of lost, well, you think they want to keep track of it somehow. If they had to put it somewhere because it was the only thing keeping some kind of demon at bay, so they had to plant it like Excalibur in the ground. Like you think they'd want to track where they left the thing, like the car keys. They would put some kind of beeper on it. And these treasure maps are a way that, yeah, they did, but over time, maybe as part of inheritance, it got ripped into pieces. The kids of, so if the grandfather stabbed the ground with Excalibur to trap whatever, okay, his sons knew what was up. And then they maybe had the map, but then each piece was torn for one of the sons. But then their sons maybe know less. Things happen, so you get generations. It's gone, but still the fragments of the map are floating around. Maybe they get out of one of the great grandkids is bankrupt and his estate gets sold or becomes decrepit, and that becomes the place that the party is, or where they find fragment number one. And then, so you can really tie it into the lore of your more powerful things that you want the party to find, because you are going to make them work for it. And you can use these things as almost like a little bit of a clue. Like maybe they don't know that it's Excalibur at the other end of it, but there's going to be stuff maybe on their fragment that will at least allude to a certain power level and maybe even a consequence, right? Because if you're thinking about it, if this thing's in the stone to protect the world from something, you go get it, you're unleashing it. And then maybe that can be where your bad guy is like, I'm going to go get it and I'm going to unleash it. So we got to use these treasure maps to get there before them to do something to, even if the treasure map at that point isn't for us to get it, it's for us to stop, somebody else from getting it. Maybe we got to do a ritual to permanently fuse this item there to keep the portal, shut, or, whatever it may be, whatever they choose to do.
Well, and that's great too, because that can create more of a dilemma. Maybe at first they want the sword, and then they realize that if they pull the sword, they're going to unleash evil. So how much do they want the sword? Are they willing to take the sword and unleash the evil? Or are they going to leave it there and fuse it permanently? So that creates a nice little dilemma for the PCs.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and I always like that kind of thing. I mean, obviously, whatever your style of campaign is, but when you get those choices where there's like good and, there's kind of not even good and bad answers, but just where the answers are both worthwhile for different reasons. So there's a certain, like, there's some fun in getting powerful magic stuff, and there's the consequence of what happens in the world and having to deal with that, and like making it so like both of them are kind of like, ooh, I could really do that, but then I got to deal with like either. I like when you have to wait. I don't like the heavy-handed moral stuff, like where there's not really a question at all. It's like are you a real piece of crap that you're going to go do this, or are you going to do the right thing, right? It's kind of like, well, you can do either way, but maybe you take the sword and you decide, well, I'm going to defeat the evil this time, and there's a way to do that, and then you do it. I also like magic items that like have a purpose. Like I love in Lord of the Rings how the Morgul blade, or not the Morgul blade, the one from the Barrow Downs takes out the Witch King, and like that was its purpose. And once its purpose is gone, like the blade is gone. Now, obviously, in that point, that's like the end of the campaign. So it's not like, where Mary, is it Mary, I guess, who has it, is like upset because now they're level 8, but they lost their, plus two dagger of stabbing. But I really dig those kind of things that have like limited use, and that's something, again, you can people always wonder how you work lore for this stuff into the game, and these kind of maps where you could literally have it written, and it makes sense that you would have these identifying maps with something about them, maybe ciphered, maybe in another language, maybe in a riddle, but like you want these memory, they would put these memory kind of things in there, because whole idea of writing these down is at some point someone who may not be able to be told of it directly might need to figure this out. So you want to put some method of doing it. It makes sense these little bits of lore would be on these maps.
Right. Could be like monks that have taken a vow of silence, a monastic order, and it's basically a book, right? And it's trapped in their library that ends up being found. But yeah, I wrote that down as one of my things. It could be a poem, or it could be described based on old landmarks, which is what I said before about the map.
You gotta have those.
Yeah,
go to the cliff that looks like the rock that looks like the giant's head.
Yeah, and then when you get there, there's an ocean, and you're just like, what? But yeah, you could, so that's all super fun. But I did actually make a thing like, why did they leave it? I think that's an important thing to think about. So why was the treasure left? Which is kind of what we were just talking about. Why did they leave it there? Is it just they couldn't carry it, like the guy in the dungeon whose party died? Did they plan to come back for it, or was it left because of something bad? Maybe they didn't want this magic item for whatever reason, right?
And I think that's another good table to have, because again, like if you're rolling it up randomly, these are things you're going to have to, if you're, and sometimes you have time. Sometimes your party will find a map and they'll say, oh, I'll check this out later. And then they go do it. And when it happens with me, I'm like, okay, cool. Because that's going to give me like an hour to think about it before they leave the dungeon or whatever. And then go back and like, while we're camping at night, I look at the map, but you got to answer the questions right away. If you have, we could make a same kind of table, like who had it, like what happened to them, or, some kind of like even another like 3 things or 2 or 3 column table to kind of look at like the kind of the who, why, and where sort of.
Yeah,
what
I
map
mean, even if
fragment
it's
was.
vague, right? Like an item could be to hold back an ancient evil. It doesn't have to say to hold back, Bob the demon.
Yeah, I
It
think
could
you just need that
basically
first
be
step, right?
vague.
Why was
Yeah,
this last holder having it here, right?
right.
Because I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think in OSR, there's not a ton of spells that are going to, at least in the OSR spells that I think about, that are going to give you like the whole backstory of the thing from jump. So all you need is that first step of why did this person have it in this location now, and then after that, the party's going to have to go to sages, go to do something else, or maybe find higher powers. Maybe they got like a high level cleric, something could cast Speak with Dead or something. I don't know, depending on your game, could do something like that. But barring that, that's kind of as far as they're going to be able to get. And they even that, they're not going to be able to get all of it. But just, I think it's important as a GM for you to have it, because then when you're trying to describe it and maybe they're trying to suss things out, you can kind of feel where to go with it, because kind of the story. Like they may not know that this skeleton they found with the with the rolled up map fragment in their pocket was a famous explorer going blah 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 blah, but that can inform the kind of kit that maybe the other stuff that's surrounding him. He's going to have stuff that will be that way. Maybe other little things can give clues to that just gives it a more richer, less generic kind of thing than just kind of generic adventure with generic pouch.
Right, exactly. No, that makes sense. Like, he's got some kind of signet ring or something, and you would know that because you have an idea of who he is. Yeah, I definitely think it comes down to, having, a handful of these at least roughed out before you start any campaign. It's just a thing you can sit down for an hour in an afternoon and just make some basic, at least wide, generic, but with enough information that you could flavor it, maps. I mean, you don't even have to draw them. I think that was one thing that I wrote. It's like you don't have to actually draw the map right away if you don't want to. Because
no, I mean, I don't even think you really. I mean, I always think it's fun to give them up, but I'm not even sure you really have to at all, because you can describe, like here it's showing 3 landmarks in a roughly north to northwest fashion. The first one has like a vaguely humanoid silhouette, and next to it is written Skull Rock, right? Like it's not like the players are going to be taking that map and overlaying it across something else in your game and like, wait, it's not quite a skull. Like, no, they're going to be down there and then rolling or looking around, and you can say, oh, you see the rock that looks like a skull, right? As long as you can describe it, if you're comfortable describing without having your own kind of pictorial representation, you could really do it with just giving yourself some notes. If you don't want to draw it, or you can't draw it, or until you get it, because if you need something right away, just roll for a few things and figure that out, and then just draw it afterwards to catch up to your imagination.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that you can draw them if you want, and I'm with you. I like handouts. Like if I'm playing in person, I like to do the print it out or draw it, and then cook the paper and make it brown and whatever, crunkle it up.
I've not gone the whole way with that, but I've seen some tutorials on it. I want to do it. I just haven't gotten that. Yeah. What is your technique? Do you have any good technique for?
Yes. So you want to you can print it if you want, and then you on a piece of print paper. I use coffee because I drink a lot of coffee. You could use tea. You basically make a very dark coffee. You let it sit in there for a while and really soak, like even overnight. And then you take it off and without ripping, and you lay it inside your oven rack at you warm the oven to 200, like the minimum it can go to. And then once it's warm, you just turn it off, put the paper in there, and you just let it dry, and it'll naturally just kind of wrinkle up.
And does it get too dark from the coffee?
No.
Huh.
Surprisingly, coffee doesn't stain as much as you think. And it's funny. I think it's funny. I'll tell a story about this. So I was running my 5th edition group, but I used White Plume Mountain as one of the adventures. That was going to be a thing. And White Plume Mountain has a treasure map. Of course, if you run the module for the tournament the way it was written, you just tell them, hey, the treasure map goes to here. But they weren't going to find. They were going to find it on an enemy, and they hated this guy. And it was like they finally fought him. And at the very end, she was a cleric. I can't remember. She had a ring of elemental summoning or something. She's like, I want to burn this guy with a fire elemental. It's like, it was totally overkill, but it was in the moment, so I was like, so they finished and they beat him. And then I was like, you're searching the body. I'm like, oh, you find a piece of paper. And I pulled out the map, and before I hit you, I said, I'll give it to you next session. And then I went home and I took a lighter and I burned it all up, and I just gave them a burnt up. with like missing words and stuff.
Oh,
and it
that's
was really
awesome.
fun because they were like, "What does this mean?" Because some of the words are burnt off and everything. And I was like, "Well, you lit it on fire." So
Yeah,
yeah, it was really fun.
totally.
Yeah.
There are
And they loved
consequences
it.
to
Yeah.
bringing a fire elemental at the end of the fight.
But it was
No,
real
I
fun
mean
too
that's
because
awesome stuff.
not only did they like figure out what it was, but then when they were actually in White Plume Mountain, because I don't know if you ever ran or read it, like there's like a poem and it kind of describes where the different treasures are inside the mountain. So as they would find different parts of it, they'd be reading, they'd be like, "Oh, that's what that word is," and they started putting stuff together because they'd figure out like as they encountered stuff. So it was really it made
Oh,
it a little more
nice. Yeah, like
challenging.
where like was it Black Razor and where I forget the other
Yeah, exactly.
names of the swords.
Yeah, Black Razor and Wave and Whelm.
Right.
With the hammer and the trident.
Yeah,
So
I read it a long
like,
time ago. Never played it. It was always one of those kind of like really death trappy kind of.
Oh yeah, no,
kind of crazy.
It is my favorite module.
Oh really? So what do you like? Do you? I mean, as a player, to run it as a GM? What's the?
To run. I like it because it's wacky, and I like my D&D to be wacky. It's like it's definitely a what do you call it? A
funhouse.
Funhouse dungeon, right? And there's just a lot of weird shit in it, and it's a thinking dungeon. Like there is combat, but if you don't think, you're going to die. Like there's lots of traps, but they're not just like they're all well thought out. They're not just like 10-foot pit. Like there's lots of things like that. And there's a huge treasure at the end. Basically, the weapons are so powerful.
Yeah, they are.
Although technically in the module you're not supposed to keep them, but when we were kids and I played the module.
Yeah, I mean nobody was falling. Like I remember I got into an argument with a guy about what was it? Oh, it was the Hill Giant module. Temple. It was setting of the Hill Giant, whatever number G1.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, like a lot of people I remember reading stuff like burned it down. Like, well, it says in the module that only you can't burn it. And I'm like, the module says it was like a 1 in 6 chance per turn because it's raining a lot. But like when you're a kid or whatever, it's like that if you're gonna sit there and say 1 in 6 chance per turn, whatever that turn is. If you sit there with a match and you get some gas long enough, and you're like, I'm just gonna keep sitting here and lighting this corner until it lights. Like you're gonna light it, and that little paragraph isn't gonna mean too much when you're 12 and you're you're doing it. But I think it's funny too. You mentioned that because I think that's one thing that like with modules like that, like people forget. Like they're looking back, and obviously I'm not old enough to have been part of that first generation of gamers who were playing in the 70s who were approaching stuff as adults. Like my experience originally with the modules was as like a preteen kid. So the funhouse stuff was just like totally wacky and fun. And the fact that they may have been unfair or whatever, like didn't really enter into it. Like the idea, I think that people sometimes they read the stuff and they think back like it must have just been this grim, like the whole kind of grim, dark kind of metal OSR vibe. But I'm like, that's not how the games were. I mean, maybe the adults were, if I had gone to an adult game at that time, maybe they were playing it that way, but it was like, I always think of it as like Fantasy A-Team, like some like kind of like kooky characters getting together and just going with the flow of whatever's happening and just kind of brush your stuff off and you just keep on going. And then eventually you're like, you're killing gods because they had stats. So why not? You got some crazy armor class. You've got all the Vorpal swords you can carry, and you're swinging them in both hands. And then you go take out Poseidon because you could. That was the game. So
that's pretty accurate.
Are you like a Castle Amber person also? Is that one of your? Because I know that one is always the top of people's list when it comes to like Funhouse.
Yeah, I've only read Castle Amber. I've never played in it. So I don't know, or run it. I wanted to run it, but I just haven't had a chance. But yeah, I've also heard that as one of the ones. That's why I bought it. I was like, oh, Castle Amber. People talk about this all the time, but we didn't really play it. When I was a kid, we hardly played any actual modules because we were like, I was a kid. I didn't have money, so like I had.
I honestly cannot say that I really don't remember playing any modules. I would read them all and I get my hands on them, and I had the boxes, so I read Keep on the Borderlands and I think Isle of Dread like 1.5 million times, but I don't ever remember actually running because we'd all would just run whatever wacky stuff. Like I said, like taking that graph paper and just like sitting in the classroom, whatever, and just like filling the graph until like this entire 8.5 by 11 graph paper is all it is just rooms and like maybe some quarters, mostly just rooms with all kinds of doors and and numbers.
Yep. Lots of numbers.
Lots and lots of numbers.
Yeah, I agree. That's how we did it.
You got anything else on your
okay, let me look at my notes because Okay, so we kind of talked about this a little bit, but I thought of as I was sitting down, and I haven't read it in a long time, but in the Da Vinci Code, right, that was basically a treasure map, but it was words written in the around the book, right? It was like in the at the edges,
Right.
Right. It was basically, and again, it was like more like a poem or like something like that, which I think, again, I like that kind of map, because I think that one problem that people might have when they're looking at treasure maps, maybe it would hold them back from it, is they just immediately think pirate treasure map, that's going to get boring. But, based on all the stuff we're talking about, I think that's what makes them cool. Your items, your scrimshaw bone you talked about, amulets, a sword that has some etching in it, weapons that stick together that form something. They could be really anything. And I think that's where you want to expand.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, if we can get maybe some of our commenters and things to come in and help us build out some lists, because those things are, I think, really add a lot of flavor. They just take longer to set up, or you have to really think about it more. And I think it's that spur of the moment part where you get stuck and you end up thinking like pirate treasure map, because that's the first thing that pops into your head.
Exactly.
As opposed to like a book with a poem, because you're not going to think of the poem on the spot. So you just, if you think of that, you're just hoping your players go, please don't read the poem yet. Please don't read the poem yet.
They're definitely going to ask for the poem.
I read the poem.
It's like, well, it's going to take you a while.
I'm going to tell you later. It's really slow.
It's going to take a few days for you to figure it out. Okay, we'll wait a few days.
Yeah. The ink is really faded. You're going to have to get a really nice light. Only by the light of a town are you going to be able to read that poem.
Right. By the light of next session, you will be able to read it.
Yes. But I do agree with you. I think if it for me as a GM, and I would definitely give this advice. I've said this before. I feel like in other things that I think as a GM, sometimes what happens is people try to move too fast, and so they make quick decisions that end up being bad decisions. Like I gave my first level players all Vorpal swords. And you're like, why? And it was like, well, they caught me unawares, and I couldn't think, so I scrambled, and so then they have them all, right? Well, it's like, slow it down. Tell people, hey, go take a smoke break or a water break or a bathroom break, or like, give me 5 minutes. Or if you look at your clock and there's only a half hour left of the session, just say, okay, we'll you'll have this, but then I'll do it next session. Just like give your brain a chance to catch up to what's happening. I think that can save a lot of GMs a lot of trouble if they would just slow it down, take a breath. Don't feel like they need to fill the space and just hand something out or throw something out there that they're not ready for. Just don't be afraid to say, give me a minute or 5 minutes or, until next time.
Yeah. And also, if you give them a treasure map with the Vorpal weapon and then you decide that wasn't a good idea, when they get there, it's not a Vorpal weapon. Don't do that too many times because your players will hate you. Right.
Yes. Always, yes. With care. Once or twice is all right. Every time your Vorpal sword's in another castle, they're going to come to get you.
Yeah, they're going to be like, no more of that. Yeah, you got to be careful with that, right? That's a whole other topic.
Absolutely. All right, so we got Da Vinci Code. What else you got?
Yeah. Okay, I think that's all I had. I had the map, Da Vinci Code. I just had a few ideas, like putting the map leading to a place they can't get to without some other quest, which is kind of what we were talking about before. In fact, I did this in a campaign I was running. They needed something, and they found that it was an underwater city, and the underwater city was only, the waves would go back and reveal it only like once a year, but that was like 9 months away. So they couldn't really wait. So they had to figure it out. And what they did was they found a witch who could make potions of water breathing, but she wouldn't just make them, of course. She sent them on another quest to go, so it only took them maybe a month to get what they needed instead of waiting 9 months. So they had the choice, right? They could have waited 9 months, but and then they went underwater and
nice. Yeah, I like that stuff. I mean, it's like one of those things that also is a video game trope, but sometimes it works. You've seen a video game where you're in this certain area, or like what is it? Like Legend of Zelda would have that. You need the certain type of you need the boomerang to get the key to go through this area. So until you pick up the boomerang, you're not going to be able to get the key, right? Right. But it can work. Like these things like different planes or, water breathing, or if it's in it's in a cloud giant's castle that's floating 1,000 feet in the air, or these places that you can kind of, in a sense, make, you can kind of gate them a little bit and say, okay, well, you're going to have, and it gives them something to plan for. I always like that. Like, we know we need to get to the underwater city, but we're not going to be able to get there. So we got to figure out how to get a potion of water breathing. And then you figure that part out. And it really kind of lends to that, putting everything together, and you feel like you're kind of even if you're doing little things, you're making progress, right? So I'm sure they felt accomplished when they were able to figure out that they find the witch. And then when they found the ping to give to the witch, they feel like they're doing something. It's, and it's not, it doesn't feel as artificial as it does in video games where like there's a special wall.
Right.
It's like, well, why couldn't I just take a crowbar to that special wall and just hack it to death instead of having to wait for this other thing? It's like, I don't need the bombs. I'm willing to go in there just with a crowbar and just take that crack and just split it open. Well, you can't. But in one of the joys of these role playing games is, well, you can really figure out however you want to try to do water. You want to make a giant diving bell and go that route, and you're welcome to try it. But you need to figure out how to get down there.
It's funny you say that because that was another option. There was guys that dove. They had like diving suits, but they were tremendously expensive. And I basically told them, once you're in this diving suit, you're going to be more or less helpless if something attacks you because you move so slowly. It's like even though you're well protected, as soon as it pops water, you're in trouble, right? So they weighed the odds. Like they kind of looked at each option. I think one of them actually took the diving suit down to test it, and they were like, "Oh no, this is not for us. We want water breathing." Yeah,
tugging that rope. Get me up.
Exactly. But yeah, you got to give them lots of options, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I feel like as a GM, I'm there to kind of throw obstacles in there, and then your job is to try to figure out how to get around the obstacles. So you want to get to the underwater city. Plenty of ways to do it. You just got to figure out which one to try, and hopefully it'll work.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I think that's it, right? So they could be, what you're essentially doing is building future hooks into current adventures to kind of get a stream, right? Because a lot of times people talk about the story. They have a story, right? But I like to let the players kind of create the story as they go, and this is one way to do that, right? It's the same thing as putting a bunch of seeds in a town with rumors. It's kind of like you're in a dungeon. You find a map. You find and a map could even be a trail, right? You find there's a break in the wall, and it looks like somebody's crawled through here. Like, what is that? You could even look at it that way. Like, it leads somewhere down, and you look out across the landscape, and you can see that there's this not so well worn path that leads out into the distance. Do you follow it? Like, there's lots of ways that you could use a map to bring the players or the PCs in the end to future treasure.
Absolutely. And I think something about treasure maps and that kind of is the players earn it, so it has more value to them. Seeds in town kind of feel like you can just take them or leave them because they're just there. You always feel you can go back and get them, and like, oh, who cares? But when you go down and your reward is this thing, you want to see it through because that validates all the stuff you already did. Like, I had to sweat through 3 levels of this horrible dungeon to get this piece of map. I want to find out what this is, as opposed to, I don't know, the guy who's always at the tavern waiting there saying, "Oh, you're ready to kill the rats in my basement yet?" And you're like, not yet. We'll come back to you later. Like, I think there is something that fact that they worked for it puts in their mind, gives it more of a value than if it was just kind of waiting there on a silver platter, for them wherever they happen to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's it. So yeah, to me that's treasure maps in long and short. I think I covered what I was what I had thought about. I'm sure there'll be more. Let's keep the conversation going. There's always more. Yeah. but yeah, I think, and of course, keep in mind too, for anybody watching, of course, that there's like tons of online, one-shot 5-room dungeons, maps that you can generate for free, like really quickly. I mean, they're not, I found doing your own thing is better, but if you needed something quickly, you could jump on online and find a map.
Yes, Dungeon. I don't know if they have like overland maps, but definitely they have. And there are some like hex map generators you could use that will put in, if I can think of them, I'll put them in the description or whichever channels I put them in the description. That can give you like, wilderness maps that give you things like interesting bits about the different hexes. So you can just pick one of these hexes that has some weird thing like a coven of witches who've forgotten their names. And you can say, okay, maybe the map is leading, to them. And then by the time they get there, you can figure out if there's another step to it or wherever. So you just got to kind of, I always feel you just have to stay that one step ahead of the players, right? If the players are trying to get to those witches, if you've got that part down, you can just start thinking that next step while they're working with the witches. Then once they get there, you just keep, because I'm like you, I feel like the story is doing whatever the the players really, want to do, as opposed to the one true, story that I'm transmitting to them, which I think is it's not as clean and neat as a narrative. I think if I were to go back and recount my games, there's a lot of swerves and back and forths, and like maybe we'll do this and do this. But it almost to me seems more authentic in a sense, because usually, you know, life is not on a straight path. You start one way, you zig, you zag, you go whatever, and I found that a lot of the things that come up in all those zigs and zags are more fun. And to be honest, I always say, like, I don't remember some amazing story moments from games that I played like years ago. Not even long ago. Like, I don't remember them. I remember the funny moments. I remember either the crazy, amazing moments where somebody did something just unbelievable or something horrible. Like, you know, the time that they tried to jump across the pit and they failed miserably and they were impaled on spikes, and you know, because they slipped on a banana peel or something, or when they you know, cut the head off the minotaur once, whatever. Like, those are the things I remember. I don't remember some great narrative that we were under. Like, half the time, like, what did we even do in that game? I just remember having a fight with this guy, or I remember one time my character was the lone survivor and got trapped in this cavern because he could use spider climbs, so he was able to get away from the bad guys, but at the same time he had nowhere to go. So we just kind of ended the game with like him like clinging to a stalactite and being like, I got nowhere to go, and everyone else had died. Like, those are like I don't remember what we were doing there. I don't remember like the grand plan of the mission we were on or anything. I just remember like that was the end of that character, like trapped in a cavern, you know, and probably gonna die in an hour when his spider.
What's the duration of that spell? Right?
You know, that was it. But those are the things I remember, and I feel like the game, these kind of games, I feel like they create a lot of those moments, even if the narrative is messy. You know, so for me, it's a good trade-off.
No, I agree. That is a really, I think it's something people say a lot, but they don't maybe fully comprehend until they play a game like that. It's more open-ended, where they can see that, like, if you look back at, like, so you play like 10 sessions and you look back at it, there is a story that happened, but you didn't know what it was going to be.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
You could write it in reverse now, you know, because everybody thinks that they're the one authoring the story, right? When you pick up a book and it's like being narrated, everybody thinks their character is that person. You're probably not. The one that survives at the end, that was the guy that wrote the book.
Right. That's it. That's what I think. I used that, not quite that same analogy, but I call it. I think that the analogy I used was like when you read stories about like people who fought in wars, right?
Right.
Like, you're reading that thread of the person who made it all the way, but when they were going through it, some people lived. The guy who read it, he was probably not the first recruit to join the war. Right. Some of those guys lived, but a lot of those guys died. He just, on those moments, people are falling left and right. New guys are coming, old guys are leaving. This is happening, and then when you get to the end of it, that's when you have like, these are the guys who lived and they can get medals or whatever. Right. But in the actual moment, it's just every person for themselves is trying to survive.
Yeah, you know, like Luke, right? He blew up the Death Star. Oh, spoiler for a very old movie, right? But there was a lot of X-Wing fighters who got blown up on the way.
That's it. Porkins, who pour some out for Porkins.
Yeah, poor Porkins.
And that was his name too. That's not even a shot at the guy's weight. That is literally his name is Porkins.
His name is Porkins. Yeah. Best quick Star Wars character.
Yeah. I always had a soft spot for Wedge, and then I don't even remember the name of the guy that wasn't. I don't even know how we knew before. Like, the other cuts came out. The guy who like Luke was talking to. Who was the guy that Luke was like gonna go meet at Joshi Station? Because like in the director's cut, he shows up again right before, like he like hey Luke, nice to see you made it or something. But he's like the guy that Luke's whining about, like, but I'm gonna go meet like so and so at Joshi Station.
Right. Yeah, because you got to lead the planet. Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, well, see, there you go. Even that makes sense.
And treasure maps, right? The Death Star plans. It wasn't even about them. It wasn't something they had to find it and get it to the people who could decipher it and then turn it into an actionable plan. So, like, that's nothing, right? So, like, if you have some crazy thing happening, maybe the ye old ritual to summon Orcus, maybe it's not so easy just to go stop it with arms. You need some kind of counter thing, or you need to get through it, and that a treasure map type of construct could be just the thing you need to get to that place before the cultists can finish opening up some portal to the abyss.
There you go.
All right.
I think that's all we got for treasure maps. At least that's all I got.
I feel like I'm all treasure mapped out for now. I'm sure as soon as I stop, I'll think like, oh, there were 10 things I forgot to mention about treasure maps that were on my brain. But yeah, I'm good on treasure maps for now. Hopefully that'll
be treasure maps part 2.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed this. I'll be happy to do this
me too.
as often as we can get our schedules, because I feel like it's nice. As much as I don't mind doing the monologues, because I'm willing to speak and I don't care if I'm the only one who hears me. It's nice having someone else just bounce ideas off of and just get other points of views and get that inner, that just kind of, you can't really fake the back and forth with yourself. I mean, maybe some people can with certain brain types can have their own conversations, two people in one brain. But, for me, it's nice to have a second person to.
No, I agree. Like I said many times during this, where you were saying something, I like came up with something. I was like, oh, or you were saying something I kind of already had noted. I was like, oh, that's great. Because then I can kind of,
absolutely,
expand on it.